5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good morning, Vanguards. My name is Jaren, and I am the Director of Public Relations for Vitreus. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you to today's Tech Talk. We are grateful you're here and excited for today's broadcast. From Vitreus, I am joined by our Chief Technology Officer, Tim, our Director of Education, Drew, and a very special guest, our Chief Information Security Officer, Jos. Allow me to introduce you to Vitreus, where Web3 meets AI. We fuse blockchain technology and AI for a seamless compliance solution. Our all-in-one platform offers data storage, management, and interactivity serving real-world businesses. Our mission is to revolutionize the way traditional companies use digital ecosystems within banking, financial services, insurance, and energy sectors across the globe. Before I hand it over to the team, if you're new to Vitreus, you can visit our website, vitreus.io, and read our light paper to learn more. We are currently in stage 6 of our progressive pre-sale, and it changes to stage 7 tomorrow, Saturday. Now, before I hand the mic over to Jos, I'd like to take a second to hand the mic over to Jos. I'm gonna get there this morning.
Go. Oh, we're so excited. I love it.
Yes, I want to hand it over to Jos and let him introduce himself to you. And so take it away, Jos.
Great. Well, thank you, Jaren. And nice to meet you all here virtually. My name is Jos Bessems. I am since 3 months the proud CISO of Vitreus. Maybe just a little bit about my background, and I think we'll get to talk about security a lot in this session. So I won't dive in too much detail. But I have a background in consultancy for one of the big 4 consultancy firms. Done that for over 15 years for some of the biggest technology companies out there, and basically all over the world, in Silicon Valley, Germany, South Africa, and of course in Holland, which is where I'm based. I'm in Amsterdam. It's super warm here. We're suffering from a heat wave here, but thankfully my ventilator is still working, so I'm to cool myself down. Well, basically in my career, I've always focused on helping companies meet the security challenges they face, mitigate risks, meeting regulatory requirements, or implementing and designing technology architectures. So after doing that for 15 years, at some point I met Tim, and it didn't take much convincing on Tim's side to get me involved in Vitreus, because it's really such a privilege to be to really be part of this project at such an early stage, so that I can really kind of make an impact and take what we call security by design to the next level. Let me pause there for a moment, and I think this is also an opportunity for you to ask questions. So
we'll hold questions for the end. I'll go through and pull all the questions out of chat then. But I mean, if any of the team has questions.
No, I just want to reaffirm how fortunate we are, Jos, to have somebody of your caliber joining our core team. Not only do you have a deep background, and one of the big 4 was obviously PwC, and you have already made a tremendous impact in our ability to create a revolutionary platform that will be compliant and want highly regulatory businesses to put their data and whatnot on our chain. So super excited to introduce you formally to the community. So with that, here's what we really want to focus on today: the vNodes, right?
Yes,
I'm beaming, Tim. I can't wait.
It's vNode time, and you've all been very patient with us, so we get all this together. But a quick update on the vNodes. We will be announcing the pre-order next week. Appreciate the patience on that. That's in the works. We have a couple surprises that Chad will be announcing when those are ready. And happy to announce that the development nodes are en route to their respective locations to begin the rigorous testing of the plug and play validator vNode that we're going to unveil today. So I have, so let's start with where they're going. So we have some development nodes going to Warsaw, Poland, and that's where the main development will happen. So the Vanguardian OS will get installed, and once that is determined, then they'll install the networking aspect, which you also get into that later, and then we will receive the vNode holder. So it's myself here in Indianapolis, Indiana. It is Mr. Drew out of Chicago, Illinois. Taylor has one out of Toronto, Canada. Mr. Jos has one, as he said, out of Amsterdam. Mr. Barron has one out of Hamburg. And then, of course, the 4 in Warsaw. And that's really critical because not only does this naturally represent the global nature, but even the development and the new features and whatnot will be able to happen in an emerging geo pattern, which we're really excited about. So with that, who wants to see the actual components of a vNode?
I do, but before you go, I think it's important that we help everybody understand the physical distribution of the vNodes,
Sure.
right? So
Absolutely.
we've got Warsaw, Chicago, Indiana, but as you guys procure them as well, we're also going to expand our edge network farther. Can you go into detail, Tim, and help people understand why that spread geographically is important and what the edge computing means to us for being decentralized?
Sure. So the vNodes themselves are the core component of the chain, right? What we're doing here is we're validating transactions as they happen. And we'll get into it a little bit more, but the reason why this is really critical is we are fortunate that we can design this from the ground up in a distributed manner properly. So this isn't decentralized, this is distributed. And here's the difference between decentralized and distributed. Decentralized means that you have a natural aspect of geography, right? And it's not necessarily planned, or you have heavy, maybe areas in the United States or Europe. What we're actually doing from a distributed perspective is we are able to connect over 300 locations throughout the globe on our edge networking and take these compute vNodes. And as you all order these, you strengthen the chain. So what we're not doing is we're not putting these vNode personas inside of, like, let's say AWS or a traditional data center provider, which is very common in the layer 1 proof of stake networks today. And that is a very important concept, not just for the strength of the chain, but for the consensus method and the versatility and the utility of the publicly facing blockchain known as PowerPoint.
Makes sense to me. Hopefully that helps people.
Yeah. So I'm going to grab my camera here. Apologies if it's a little bumpy, but I want to show you what one of these looks like and why we chose an embedded system, not just for power efficiency, but for computational power. And then we're going to really get into the architecture, the compute, the CPU itself, which is a really critical component of blockchain validation. So let's see what we got here. It'll be a little bumpy, but what you see here, what I've done is I've opened up the vNode itself case. And as you can see, it's all very integrated. So this is low power. There's no moving parts. And what you see down here is this is where the memory will go. And this is our Kingston memory here. And then this little part right here is where our hard drive goes. It's called an M.2 slot. And of course, we're using our Western Digital partner.
Is that foil underneath it, Tim?
It is
an anti-static bag.
Static bag. So I don't ruin anything here. But the beauty about this, right, is the longevity of this system. There's no moving parts. It's very compact, and it's really meant to, when we ship these out globally, it's meant to just be something that runs very, very efficiently on power. I think, Drew, keep me honest, this is a 65 watt CPU. Right?
Yes, the max TDP for the CPU itself is 65 watt, but the entire package will be a little bit higher than that. Powering the RAM, the main board, the Ethernet ports, everything else like that. But I should be getting mine today, Tim. And when I do, I'm going to put a power meter on it, read it, and then I'm going to test the snot out of it and see what its peak wattage.
Yeah, Drew and I are the first to get our nodes, but we'll sync up later today, and we'll get that going. But Drew, while I get my camera resituated, can we put up the slide around kind of the Masari report and the layer one network?
Absolutely. As soon as I figure out how to drag that button.
One thing I was thinking about the vNodes, though, like our vNodes versus validators for other chains. When you have validators on other chains, think about the barrier to entry on those validators. You have to have all the equipment, which is expensive. You have to have, like Ethereum, you have to have 32 ETH, which right now is like somewhere around $50,000 to $60,000. That's a very high barrier to entry, which, you know, does minimize how many people have that opportunity. And also it does reduce your decentralization. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Ethereum. I'm a huge Bankless fan. I've always followed Ethereum very closely. But the way that our system is built with these, you know, really affordable vNodes that are under $1,000, you only need one VTRS. You know, it's not a lot of hard work to run one. You plug it in, you sync it to your phone, you start your staking. That is so easy for the average person to get in, and really can increase the amount of users who are participating, and really increase how decentralized this chain is compared to others.
Well said. And that's why you're getting a purple vNode, Jaron, because you just said that beautifully, right? So let's dive into that, because that is a wonderful segue, right, between, you know, what you just saw from a hardware perspective and usability. So this is a graphic that we pulled from a Masari research report. And it's just a great, neutral, objective report on what's happening on proof of stake layer one networks. And what you see here, Jaron pointed out, is really I want to bring your attention to the minimum staking requirement and the CPU mark. So it's basically the top two columns that you see here. And you know, this is just a great way to show our innovation and continue to build on those that came before us, right? And I think Chad I know he put out a very nice tweet that kind of noted that Ethereum, the majority of those nodes are actually running in AWS, right?
Yes.
And what that means is there's things called regions. So there's a region of like US East, US Central, and these are where you would be able to put your node. So like if you have 50 nodes running in US East AWS, that means you're in only that geography. Whereas what we are doing is we are enabling the true distributed nature of this proof of stake layer one network power plant. But here's where it gets really interesting. When you look at the vNodes that we selected, there's a very important watermark called a CPU mark. Drew, do you want to really explain what a CPU mark means and why they have a minimum recommendation?
You might have to go into detail for that one for me, because I'm not sure how that equates to cloud computing.
It's not cloud computing, right? So this is just your standard benchmark of how powerful a CPU is. So for example, our CPU has a benchmark classification of 20,000, right?
Yep.
And if you look at Ethereum, their minimum is 6,600, which really represents how powerful our nodes really are.
Yep. So when you talk about CPU mark and benchmarks, there's some things. There's a tool called Cinebench, right? And you really tax the CPU by trying to compile an image or whatever. It's just a standard test. But what that lets us understand is how quickly the CPU can take the information, do what it's supposed to do, and output it, right? So the faster that is, the more cycles per second, the more data you can chug through and do what you're supposed to do, right? So when you look at, I'm pointing at the screen, when you look at Ethereum, you see that their CPU mark is almost 7,000, but not really, right? So compared to Avalanche and Cardano, it's light years faster, right? And Ethereum was one of the first, right? No slam to them. They're amazing, and what they've done is really paved the road for us to be great. And that's really important to us, to make sure that our hardware is the most efficient, most powerful for the dollar, right? You talk bang for buck. Our CPU mark, our RAM, our non-moving part vNode, the power consumption, it was all very carefully considered to ensure that when we distribute these to you guys, it's going to last and it's going to be way more powerful than those that came before us. And I think that's something to get excited about, for sure.
It is. And this is such a good report, because let's look at the memory. Let's look at the storage, right? We're 32 gigs of memory, and you see across the board outside of Solana, that's right on par. a 20,000 CPU mark. So it's the higher, the better, right?
Yep.
We're right there. So we're not compromising CPU power. We're not compromising power draw by having these massive, power supplies that are pulling 300 and 400 watts. And at a 2 terabyte Western Digital Blue hard drive, we're right there as far as storage consumption as well.
So to your point about Chad's tweet, I went and pulled it for anybody who doesn't, follow X, Twitter, whatever it is now. The point of his tweet was that of the 5,901 Ethereum nodes, the majority are being run through centralized web providers like Amazon Web Services, which the claim or the worry there is that it leaves the Ethereum blockchain exposed to a centralized point of failure.
Yep.
That's what we're talking about, why decentralization is so important to us. And while Ethereum is decentralized, there are ways to do it better. And there's ways to, really make it to where anybody can be involved. That if there is an issue, something goes down, you're not losing the whole blockchain and validators in one go. We're distributed all around the world. There's ways to make it better.
No, and that right there, right, to hone in on the difference between distributed and decentralized. Ethereum is decentralized, as is Cosmos, Cardano, and Avalanche, but they're not distributed. Distributed means you're absolutely not locked into majority geographies. So I am very excited. When I read this research report, it really it came out in May of this year. Well, it was May 26th of 2023.
Masari puts out great stuff. If you don't follow Ryan Selkis on X, they put out some great stuff.
Right, and it's a great source of objective information that lets us know that we are truly innovating this space. And again, to reconfirm, we are building a proof of stake layer 1 network in a distributed fashion. And I'm super excited about the balance of the CPU and the power draw, and the fact that these specs match the very credible predecessors that came before us.
I would even go further. They don't just match. I think they supersede. Sure. What we're doing is going to be the new standard for people who are trying to do decentralized. It's the standard. I'm so excited I can't even get the words out of my mouth. What we're doing is going to be how crypto 2.0 is going to be in the future. This is what you're supposed to be doing, and we're paving the way. Trust me.
Well, and I think about one last point on this from me is Ethereum is publicly accessible, is a public blockchain. So anybody can build on it. Our chain is publicly accessible, which means that there is some KYC required to be on the chain. But that is so important because we have these companies coming on who are very sensitive with their data, and they want to know who's kind of in their vicinity, right? Yeah. And we kind of get the best of both worlds. We get that decentralization, but we also have the ability to work with these amazing companies in these regulated industries, which is really neat that some of these other chains may not have that same opportunity, or it would be a lot more work for them to get there.
Well, and that is one of the main barriers of blockchain adoption. It's not like blockchain hasn't been tested between, especially the 2018, 2019 timeframe within corporate America and just corporations in general. It's the fear of the regulatory aspects of having to KYC and anti-money laundering, right? And what we're seeing with McKinsey reports, Citigroup Global, London Stock Exchange just released a report 2 days ago where their digital assets groups, they're saying blockchain is absolutely being reevaluated, not from a crypto perspective, but from a digital asset perspective. And with that digital asset driving the need and the want for efficiencies and democratization, that's where our publicly accessible blockchain is a huge differentiator, because we help those companies de-risk that aspect by knowing who is on their chain and eliminating bad actors. And that's really critical because that wave of tokenized assets is coming. And more research reports are being delivered on a weekly basis from very reputable sources. Yep. So with that cybersecurity segue, Mr. Jos, let's talk about how we're going to be compliant. Let's talk about your expertise that you so very much love to just, I can do this. Let's talk about SOC 2. and ISO 27001? Real quick.
Sure. Yeah. As an organization, it's not only, and as kind of, in designing our product, it's not only that you kind of design secure products, which is what we are doing, and I can explain more specifically how we are doing that for the vNode. But you also need to demonstrate that to your stakeholders, right? Be it customers, be it your investors or regulators. They'll want to know if you are secure. And what they typically do is they send their auditors to you as an organization, and then you need to kind of demonstrate into a very large into a low level of detail. With evidence that your security is up to par. Now,
the audits, real quick, those audits, how many controls, a control being like an area, how many controls do we have to maintain?
Well, it depends on the scheme, but it's usually around 100, 120, right? And that's a lot, and it goes all over the place. So in essence, it's those schemes are quite good, but it's detailed. It's about configurations of your SIEM system. It's about processes. It's about governance. It's about security, incident management, crisis management. Everything is basically involved there. So what the ISO organization has come up with, and I'm going to explain ISO 27001 first, is basically a scheme of controls and a way of reviewing those controls by an independent auditor that allows organizations to be certified and achieve an ISO 27001 certificate, right?
Which is a big deal, right?
It's a big deal. And instead of having, being audited by all your customers or all your stakeholders, which is going to take a lot of time and overhead, you're going to be able to present your certificate and say, okay, this is proof that that my security posture is up to standard. And ISO 27001 is particularly popular in Europe, and in the US there's, I would say, a similar but more strict and robust scheme, which is called SOC 2, and SOC stands for Service Organizations Compliance. I'm not even absolutely sure here.
There's a lot of acronyms in our industry. No one blames you.
No one likes that, right?
Yeah, but basically it is a similar scheme, but in more detail. And basically, if you are SOC 2 certified, you are also able to show to your stakeholders that security is up to standard. But then you're able to do that through a very detailed report, so your stakeholders can really see up to into the details and see what you've implemented, and there's also some kind of overall conclusion as to what the security level of compliance really is. Now, that is something we need to do as well at some point. I mean, I would say
we're in process. Obviously, that's something you've been working on for a month.
Yeah, of course. And I think what we're focusing on at the moment is really making sure that we implement security by design, right? And security by design means that you implement security measures early on in the product development lifecycle. Sometimes it's also called shift security left.
Yeah.
So that you can leverage as much of the, let's say, native capabilities of the tooling and that we are using, and also what I was going to say, the native capabilities, but also really kind of design it from scratch, so that you're saving a lot of, let's say, efforts later on in implementing security. So you really,
simply put, security is a focus for everything that we do. It's built in, and we're doing it from the ground up the right way the first time. Would you agree that's a fair statement?
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Absolutely.
I appreciate your brevity.
There's no time like the first time to do the job right. Absolutely.
Yes.
And
so can we bring up can we bring up the Vitreus architecture?
Yeah, and while I do that, some of the things that Chad talks about is starting where we want to end up, and that means we want to make sure that when we're done, it's what we wanted from the beginning. Does that make sense? So we're taking security as a foundation of how we build things, and I can't get this thing to go full screen. There we go. So this is the architecture. Let's take a look and talk about this, Tim.
A bit of an eye chart, but if you're in Discord, you've seen this, and we wanted to put this together because what this does is it really explains the layer of our architecture, right? Each layer and what it's doing. But let's start with the technical specifications of the vNode that will begin its pre-order next week. So we talked about the CPU mark, and you saw the Masari report. The CPU mark right there is 20,760.
That is 3 times better than ETH.
It's an incredible amount of power. So let's break down what that means. So, Drew, what is the difference between performance cores and efficiency cores, and how is that translating to the scalability long term from a CPU perspective?
So efficiency cores are pretty much a new thing that Intel came out with the last few years, right? So back in the day, your i5 processors, let's just say you had 8 cores and 16 threads, and that was like, wow, I have 16 threads. Then they started thinking, well, what if we segmented those cores and made them specific for certain tasks, right? So our performance cores are going to be keeping the system up and running. Our efficiency cores, we can target specifically for the kernel to be handed out for our software, right? So we're developing the vanguarding OS, and we can say, okay, you have a dedicated 8 cores to play with. Now, normally when you think about the machines from the past, you had 8 cores to do everything, to keep track of your processes running, the clock, everything that you're trying to do. With the efficiency cores, we can segment and isolate. We think we talked about this in a previous call. We were talking about siloed our information to protect it. So that's sort of the same thing. We can lock those efficiency cores away and say, you're just for vanguarding OS. Do whatever you want and have as much power as you want. And it's uninterrupted. It's so fantastic.
And that separation and that many cores dedicated to staking, right?
Yep.
And the running of that OS is critical because blockchain likes high performance cores when it needs it, but it likes to run steady. And what we'll find out as we begin rolling these out, especially with these dev nodes, is what we can actually do within those efficient cores and performance cores to scale. Right?
Yep.
It's an unbelievable architecture. And one thing that I saw, so Pat, the Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger was in an interview with Deutsche Bank. I think it was last week, and Intel's betting that AI as it in different workloads, and I'm going to include a high performance workload like blockchain, they're going to be moved out of cloud, out of data centers. They're going to want to put them closer to the edge, right? And that's exactly what we're building. So Intel's their CEO said that the latency and the different requirements to be able to access the data or what AI or what blockchain is doing has to get pulled closer to the source. So what does that mean? That means that these are going to be, these workloads are going to be put back into where they're being accessed. And I love that this boom is happening in 2023, but I think it's just beginning, and other companies are validating that, where again what we're building and even the different future personas of the vNode types will be also revolutionary. And we'll get into that in a second. But I think that, because Drew, keep me honest here. You and I and Taylor have been doing this vNode, since June?
Feels like forever. Yeah.
We've looked at every possible configuration, and I couldn't be happier with what we've selected here.
Yeah, I think some things, and this is going to be over a lot of people's heads. When you have a large PC, right? Imagine literally this size. Okay, you have data traces from the RAM to the CPU, right? And that's actually this long. Okay, it seems insignificant, but that's actually a bit of latency, right? Of how long that takes. Our vNode's motherboard is about like this, so everything's much, much tighter. So the time to transmit that information, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but it makes a huge difference when you're talking about efficiency of data throughput. You don't have to wait as long as you would when it was much larger. So I'm so excited, Tim, I can't even hold it. I just want to play with this stuff.
Well, check your FedEx tracking number.
I'm waiting for the doorbell to ring, and I'm going to go answer the door. I promise you.
If If Drew disappears, we know where he went.
Yeah, you'll know why.
Fine. He has to sign for it, so it's fine.
Yeah.
So, all right, we've talked about the CPU architecture and the power and the efficiency and the pull. So Jos, let's move into let's go from the ground up on this architecture. Let's talk about the physical layer and our three partners and the between Vultr, ASUS, and Western Digital, and then work our way up to the networking side, please.
Sure. As we have a saying in Holland, and it says, vertrouwen komt te voet en gaat te paard. Now, that means trust arrives by foot and leaves at a horse pace, right? And, just to kind of reiterate what you were saying earlier, Tim, that I think that is especially important when in the adoption of new technologies such as blockchain and also AI. But where blockchain has kind of an inherent security in itself, it doesn't mean that the vNodes we don't need to protect the vNodes. Security of the vNodes is very important, and that's kind of what you see in that lower physical layer. And so a vNode, when it arrives at your doorstep, is going to be fully tamper-proof, which means that all data at rest is encrypted. The operating system is securely booted. There's maybe a little bit technical, Drew. You promised to intervene if I go into too much technical details.
No, I think you're doing okay right now. But the saying you mentioned, it basically means trust is slow to earn but quick to lose, right?
Absolutely.
So it takes a while to earn trust, but you do one thing wrong and it's gone in a blink of an eye. And that's why it's important to design the things we are right now, the way we're doing it.
Yeah, indeed. So where was I? Secure boot, but also the connection to, and this is a segue to the next layer, the connection to our backend infrastructure, but also the connection across vNodes themselves is encrypted, and is encrypted through Cloudflare Warp technology. What I think I'd like to mention as well on that physical layer is, well, it's actually the middleware layer, is that it's not only important to, for the vNodes to be absolutely secure and tamper-proof from the start, but we also need to keep them secure, right? Because there's vulnerabilities.
Before you go too far, let's talk tamper-proof. What does that mean? You mean someone just plugging something into it, or what does that mean?
Well, it means that it's not possible to, for example, plug in your own USB cable and just go fiddling with the data and connect to other vNodes or whatever, or maybe even opening the vNode and plug into some kind of I don't know, to the CPU and somehow try to intervene in some kind of process. That's what tamper-proof really is, because basically the vNodes will automatically notice when that happened and kind of
protect itself.
To that point, the user couldn't tamper with the device, and if they did, it wouldn't affect the entire chain, or someone else like outside, like Joe Schmo down the street, who is like likes messing with someone's electrical devices. He couldn't hack in and take down the whole Vitreus blockchain by messing with Drew's vNode. That's
spot on. Yeah, that's exactly how it is.
Yep. And if a bad actor is detected, if they're trying to do something to their own vNode, they're done and you're off the chain and you can't do anything about it. So we can sort of manage and monitor the nodes and what's happening. I'm not saying we're going to go shut down your vNode to be advantageous to us. What we're saying is we're going to protect the network if we detect something nefarious happening. So we have that ability. We built that in from the ground.
Absolutely. And then to keep the vNode secure, so for example, to keep the operating system updated and patched against vulnerabilities that will inevitably arise in the future, we have in the middlware layer, and this is where it's going to be difficult for me not to become too technical. It's what's called CI/CD pipelines, which basically means that we can automatically push updates to the vNodes when it comes to, for example, changes in functionality, or patches for vulnerabilities. And that's really important. They will be pushed automatically, so the end user doesn't have to do anything. And that's really crucial in making sure that the vNodes not only are secure, but will remain secure towards the future. So that's kind of, I'm moving from,
No, this is good. Let's expand on that, because this really also, exemplifies the spirit of the Vitreus vNode. We don't want you to have to worry about firewalls. We don't want you to have to worry about programming. We don't want you to have to worry about updating, your software in these very complex, staking rigs. When you plug it in for the first time and you attach to it through your vApp, the continuous nature of the security and feature improvements and feature pushes is just as important to maintain that level of simplicity. And that's really the goal here of what we're doing with this tech stack. And I'm excited about that, because
it's about as set it and forget it as you can get, honestly.
Right. This is
awesome.
This is as Ronco as it gets, right? We're just making, rotisserie chickens for you all, and you just get to eat.
The Costco analogy comes back. Right? I love it.
So, yeah, that's a great point. And if you look to the right, you also will notice we've broken out each layer by its predominant partner. And I'd like to also reiterate, these aren't just technology partners. These are partners that are committed to making sure that we have sales, co-selling is what we call it, avenues in the corporate side as well. So these layers also represent, as more companies come on board into the Vitreus ecosystem, and the respective partners' utilization goes up, whether it's more Western Digital nodes, more traffic through Cloudflare, their sales folks are incentivized to increase that capacity as well. So it's a lot of really great synergies across the board to drive the incentive programs that we've outlined as well. So, Jos, back to you, buddy.
Yeah, so maybe to dive into the CloudNet partnership a little bit, because that's really the connecting layer between the physical layer that we've talked about and that middleware layer. Cloudflare is really the glue that kind of stitches it all together. So it provides connection between vNodes, but also to the backend infrastructure and data centers. And it does that using the so-called zero trust principle, which is kind of fine-grained access control to all kinds of components in your technology landscape. It's really, I was quite impressed with their proposition. I think it allows us to do what we are good at, right? And Cloudflare will basically provide a network as a service, which is something that they are good at. And Red Hat will provide CI/CD pipelines and operating systems, which is what they are good at. So I think that is maybe, I'm not sure if it's really kind of an explicit architectural principle, but it is what we're doing. We're leveraging our partnerships. We're careful in selecting our partners, but we're leveraging their technologies to really allow us to focus on what we do well, which is blockchain, AI, and the vNode proposition.
Right, and within that, also, I would like to mention, Vultr, because their bare metal offering allows us to scale across 32 data centers, including GPU, right? And we don't have to worry about supply chain or going into a data center to reboot, because it's compute as a service. So really, to your point, we're really focusing on partnerships that let us do what we do, and that's blockchain, AI, and then getting into corporations and helping them realize the benefits of this platform.
Yeah, and I think it's also a great way to avoid that we kind of build what is called technology debt, legacy that is going to be difficult to upgrade in the future, because each partner will focus on their own proposition and will innovate within their own domain. So that really allows us to remain, I think, agile towards the future and implement future innovations.
Agreed. Well said.
Let me ask you guys a question. As we scale and we have more vNodes out in the wild, does that mean the workload of each vNode could be less because there's more of them, or does that mean, What would that look like if we have way more vNodes?
Depends on how many people we have on the other side needing energy.
Exactly. So what I'm wondering is when we're talking about upgrading, some people have talked about in Discord already. Have you already started planning the vNode version 2? And I'm like, whoa, calm down, slow down.
So
The answer is yes, but let's slow
do
down.
we even need to do that? Is my point. If we have more vNodes, do we even need to upgrade soon?
No, we don't, because that's why we're really focusing on the CPU mark. The blockchain is it is a truly distributed technology. The more nodes you have, just the better you're going to be. There's so many reasons for it, and if you really want a huge overview that's really technical, go back to that Messari report and read what it takes to really create a diversified proof of stake layer 1 network, and that's what we're doing. But I'm very excited about the tech white paper because it will finally be able to explain the relationship of the energy versus corporate consumption of the SaaS offering, and then how you interact with that through staking. And there really is, this isn't, I get where the questions are coming from, or at least I respect where they're coming from, because in traditional layer 1 networks, if you get better, faster hardware, right, you do more with it, right? And in our case, it's not necessarily the same reality, and that will come to light in the technical white paper. I actually read the file, or I skimmed the filing this morning.
You skimmed it?
It skimmed all 90 pages.
We were forced to take a quiz. I mean,
well,
I wasted 4 weeks of my life memorizing that.
Taylor made us take a quiz. We had to memorize half of it.
That's true. No, I meant the patent filing that came.
Oh,
back.
okay. Sorry, I thought you were talking about the new. Okay.
No, I've read that a couple times myself, but no, I think the very nature and the innovation. I'm very excited about the next couple weeks. I'm really excited about being able to offer the spirit of crypto in a form of crypto 2.0, bring back the ability to validate and stake. I think that's really important that we keep that going, but also innovate against that. And the other thing that I'm really excited about on the V energy creation side is I encourage people to go and read some of the digital asset conversations that are happening in the corporate world. I mean, Jos, do you want to real quick talking about, because I want to make sure we leave time for questions, talk about the legislation that's coming out in the EU in January, right, with MiCA?
MiCA, yeah. MiCA is really, and this is where I think the EU is a little bit ahead of the US, is really the first regulatory framework around crypto, and it's basically all around the protection of the consumer, actually, of the buyer of crypto, of tokens. So that's going to be a lot more regulated, as those scams that we've been seeing so much and that for some reason keep happening. Really, the purpose of that regulation is to really kind of put an end to that. And so I can't go into too much detail, but there's going to be, for example, requirements to what your white paper needs to have, and what level of detail and what items it needs to describe, so that the public really has an objective and honest view on what the crypto really is and what it does and what it's for.
And also, that's similar to like traditional securities. You have to file, all kinds of information about who you are, what you are offering, those types of things, so that people coming in can make educated decisions. Basically, they're creating something similar for crypto.
Yeah, correct. And ultimately, that regulatory framework, the MiCA regulatory framework, also is going to have a certification scheme with it. So at least my expectation is that also there, at some point, you'll need to be able to provide your MiCA certificate at some point to demonstrate that you're meeting those regulations. And presumably something similar will come to the US as well at some point.
Well said. I think let's let's wrap this up and open.
I had one thing before you go too far. I was talking about the scalability and like the future of our vNodes, right? So all these other, not all of them, but most of them, the other proof of stake networks are inflationary. They'll mint new coins and they'll grow over time. So they need to start thinking about, can they scale? Do they have Vulture in their back pocket like we do, or we're static, right? We're not going to mint new coins. We are where we are, and it makes sense that we don't need to scale as fast in that regard. Can you talk about how, Tim, some of those other inflationary projects need to start thinking about those things?
Well, I mean, how do you attract more people when you have to have tens of thousands of dollars just as a prerequisite to be a validator? I don't see how that's going to be feasible. And there's already, challenges around networking. I in my conversations with financial institutions, they love the thought of blockchain. There's a lot of utility in it, especially around digital assets, but they're not going to use it because, they're at risk for a know your customer, a very big risk, right? And so we solve a lot of these things just natively and inherently. And, as more folks come on and they operate a vNode, we not just strengthen the computational aspect of our chain, but it allows us to maintain innovative. We are not an inflationary chain at all. The goal here is you'll see the innovation of the tokenomics and the ecosystem that's been designed to balance both worlds and bring them together. We're on the public-facing blockchain side, it's a consumer avenue into digitized assets on this side over here for financial institutions. It's a wonderful marriage of both sides. And we may decide that we need to upgrade the vNode. There will be a path to that. We will tell you in advance. There would be nothing that we make a decision on that won't come from some sort of objective reasoning, whether it's the market or whatnot. But I'm very confident that in what we're building it will be tried and true for years to come.
Yeah, I'm sitting here grinning like an idiot because I'm so excited about what we're doing. And when you look at ETH, Jay, you talked about it earlier. The barrier to entry is hundreds of thousands of dollars to stake, right? We require one Vitreus token.
Tens of thousands, yeah.
Tens of thousands, sorry. Yeah. But when you think about where we're going to be in 5 years, still just going to need that one token in a vNode. So we're going to attract new people, and the barrier to entry is going to be brainless. It's like, yeah, I want to be a part of that. But if you wanted to be a part of Ethereum or Solana right now, you need a third mortgage on your house. Forget about it.
And all their gas is in their native token, where ours is,
right.
In ours, you can stake and create that V energy, or you could just go buy it from the broker. And so you don't have to, if I need to go buy gas, ETH is not cheap.
Nope.
And
you can make your own gas.
Especially during a bull market, when you had people paying thousands of dollars to buy an NFT,
right.
I can just hook up my my node and earn my V energy and then go use it.
Well, we're a community, right? I remember in May of this year when we really started talking as an internal team on how could we create a commodity token, and really the usability was the foundational conversation that we had. How would this be used? What are the benefits? What are some of the things that we can do that are innovative to not have to be inflationary, to not have gas, to balance the rewards of revenue and benefit the community? All of that is intertwined and meant to be not only transparent, but to have this ecosystem in this community thrive holistically as we grow and get more complicated.
We're going to get more complicated.
We're
already complicated.
What? That's possible?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Oh goodness. All right. So we do have some very interesting questions, especially from our CEO, Chad, who happened to blow up our comment section. So thank you, Chad. These are for Jos. Let me go pull this up. So first one is from Chad. It says, can y'all talk about our commitment to SOC 2 certification and our thought process around that?
Yeah, so we left that topic where I was explaining what SOC 2 and ISO 27001 really are. So again, certificates that you can hand over to your customers and say, okay, our security is up to standard. Now, I think I'm particularly grateful for having been involved this early in this project, because again, we can do security by design. That's what we're focusing on right now, to really have security built in the product development lifecycle, so that we can accelerate adoption or implementation of those 120 controls that I was talking about earlier, because that requires quite a bit of documentation, evidence collection, and it's just so much easier if you can automate many of those 120 controls in that early development lifecycle, which is exactly what we're doing. So my expectation is that typically you first implement ISO 27001 because it's a little bit more, well, it's a stepping stone towards SOC 2. Of course, you need to be audited by an independent auditor, and that will take some time. And so my expectation is really that, let's say around Q1, Q2, 24, we should be able to already have those certificates in place.
And those are
we need to be in mainnet, right? Once we're in mainnet, that mainnet starts testing, then we get those auditors in, right?
That's when we can start building that evidence we need to demonstrate that, yeah.
And SOC 2 is also not just relevant for us, right? The wealth management sector, right, where our founders come from, they're constantly, wanting to find how they can maintain SOC 2 compliance. So when we achieve this, it's going to be relevant for wealth management firms to bring their information onto ComplyQ and Vitreus 1, and then that will extend their SOC 2 compliance as well.
And these certifications aren't one and done. You have to keep recertified yearly, right?
Quarterly.
Sorry. And that's important because tech changes very, very quickly. And in the crypto space, a week is like 3 months. So it's very
a day is like 3 months. I take a day off and I feel like I have to.
Yeah, it's very important for us to make sure we're on top of our security and certifications too. So it's important that people understand that the ISO certifications aren't a joke, and they're very serious and not hard, but it's important to stay on top of it and make sure that you are in compliance, because it does change. You gotta stay on top of it.
I'll brag on Jos for a moment. We're extremely fortunate to have Jos. Not only has he done this for so many institutions, he can do this in his sleep, and he's doing this all for us on the core team. So it's all built in. So as you get your build updates every Friday from Chad, and when we meet with Enterwise, all of the kind of the back end security controls that he's alluding to are included in those builds. So it's a very cool process. He's just very quiet about it. He doesn't push his updates as he should. So
I guess I'm a bit modest, but I mean, and I think I'd like to mention as well that, for example, we mentioned MICA, right, which is something you can get certified and have to get certified against at some point. There's lots of more frameworks that especially in the corporate world are going to be required for us to have at some point. And so also there, and we need to make sure that we set up those governance mechanisms right and in a smart way from the beginning, so that we don't spend half of our time facilitating audits.
That's a great segue. Let's talk about 25 seconds on energy. What is the compliance for energy, the energy sector?
Yeah, so that is the CIP 6 regulatory framework from the NERC, which is North
National
American
Energy Regulatory Commission.
Yeah,
what he said. Totally.
And again, that is yet another security framework with I think even more controls, or at least from a documentation perspective, you need to retain a lot more documentation than you need to do for SOC 2 and ISO 27001, which is yet another framework that we need to comply with, and or at least those elements that are applicable for us as a supplier to the energy industry. And so again, that really emphasizes that we need to be smart with it and avoid, again, spending facilitating audits all the time, which for a company I was working for, one of my clients, PwC, and a big technology provider from Germany, They had, I think, around 15 different frameworks that they needed to be compliant with. And if they would do that in isolation, they would really spend a significant amount of their time facilitating audits. And that's not what we want.
So Chad asked in the chat another question, and he said, are we, as in Vitreus, going for ISO 27001?
Yeah, that's really a stepping stone towards other ISO standards and SOC 2. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's not a quick process either. It takes a while, right?
Yeah. It takes a while. Yeah. It takes a while to set up the policies, procedures, to collect the evidence accordingly, and then to have yourself audited. So it's not something that's going to be done within a couple of weeks.
Awesome. Well, I know some people in our community are going to be happy and excited about that one. So only the best for you guys. Let's see. All right. I think I had some in Discord. Let me pop over there really quick. I know you covered Luke Wright. He asked, I know you covered Vultr on POS, but quickly, easily define in for Vitreus. I'm not 100% sure what he's asking, like what that would mean for Vitreus.
Missed that one, Jaron. Apologies.
Yeah, I'm not sure I follow either. Talking about Vultr and point of sale, but quickly and easily define for Vitreus.
Is that point of sale or point of stake?
Yeah, we'll give him time to redo that question. We'll come back to it. I don't think it makes sense.
Luke, can you re-ask or reword? Okay. Let me go. All right. So we had the question earlier that I had clarified about, is it impossible for someone to physically hack a vNode? And basically, if we saw that validator would get shut down and would not be able to affect
completely isolated off immediately. Absolutely.
Yes. Okay. So the second question this individual had, if a vNode stops working due to hardware failure, what is the recovery plan in that instance? So we've gotten that a couple times related to customer service.
Yeah, so we've gotten that a couple times. So there's going to be a mechanism, and we'll once this patent filing is behind us, we'll be able to really get into these things. We're not designing this network to punish people, right? We are offering a service. So if something does happen, there's going to be a way for you to open up a ticket and send the vNode back, pause, the reputation scores and whatnot, and a very simple explanation, and then, figure out a way to reactivate in another way. But those processes will absolutely be released when it's time. We're going to be doing some testing. Like I said, the dev vNodes are out in the wild now. We got an update this morning around the vApp. That functionality is being incorporated week over week. But there's going to be a mechanism for that.
Have we shown the updated vApp screen lately?
I don't think so.
So the one that I have it right here.
Are we allowed to?
Chad, I'm making a call. This is it. I'm fired. So
ask for forgiveness, not permission, Jay. Go for it.
The last vApp screen that we showed basically had like just the balance and then like some of the transactions showing. The new one is really cool because it shows you your V energy balance.
Right. And that's a real number. Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. Yep. I saw that and I was like, ooh, that's fancy.
Well played.
Okay, so let's try this again. Luke says, driving with voice chat. Hey, I totally get it. Someone mentioned Vultr was an inflationary factor for Vitreus. Example, some proof of stakes have a set amount of tokens entering supply every year. Others have different stuff. So I guess to that point, Luke, ours is a static supply. There are other blockchains that have like inflationary proof of stakes. They're mostly inflationary. Ethereum does have a burning mechanism, but that relies on how much transactions are going through the chain. So if you have a lot of latent, like downtime, there's not a whole lot of burn, and then you could still be minting more than you're burning. So we will have a standard supply. Right now, it is set at it was 1 billion tokens, but we burned all of stage 4, so it is currently 975 million, and there's a potential for one more burn in stage 10. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, so I think the Vulture piece was when Tim was talking about how they can scale for us. Tim, can you go into maybe some detail on how their scalability functions work for us, or would work for us?
So Vulture is our main compute platform for the different layers that you saw. The ASIS partnership is represented in the consumer vNodes, and the Western Digital partnership is represented in the corporate vNodes. So when we selected, our platforms, we were impressed by what's called bare metal. It's basically a server that's a cloud where you can, our responsibility is just to put our operating system on it, because we don't want to be in the business of owning a bunch of server hardware. It's very expensive. It really, costs a lot of money up front. And, we've been very responsible with, how we're building this. And we want to avoid any inefficiencies as possible. And quite frankly, ordering a bunch of servers and networking gear traditionally at the cost of hundreds of thousands of dollars just makes no sense. So what it allows us to do is develop, our main facility right now is in New Jersey. I have a big meeting with Vulture on Monday that I'm very much looking forward to. But they also give us access to NVIDIA GPUs, which are extremely hard to get. Even the H100s that just came out, which are 9 times more powerful than the A100, we have the ability to put them where we need them, to deploy them, scale them back, and it just gives us a lot of flexibility in our data centers, which right now we're really using, as Jos said, to maintain the vNodes. It's the different layers that we showed you, and in some cases we're going to be what's called bootstrapping the chain to make it sure it has that computational and distributed nature while we grow our vNode footprint.
Okay.
Great answer.
So,
thanks, Tim.
We have 2 questions left. So back to the vNodes. The last question, we kind of hinted, touched on it earlier about being that it is such a low barrier to entry, only needing 1 BTRS to run a vNode. Are we worried about too many vNodes being operated at a given time and operators, finding it unprofitable? Is this something that is there a cap on vNodes at some point? Yeah.
I don't think so. I mean, if we have that problem, it's a really, really good problem, and we will definitely take that into consideration. There's a balance to everything. And if we start to reach that critical mass, we would absolutely address that and, move forward in the right direction.
But something that I guess we need to consider, I know a lot of people get focused on, the Web3 side of Vitreus, like power plant, the validators. But remember, all of that fuels all of the companies coming in on the corporate side. So, I mean, think about, you have financial companies coming in, you're going to have advisor retire, you're going to have energy companies, some other things we're working on, and all of those are going to need vEnergy to, handle their transactions, to handle, any kind of movements that they make. They scan a document, they send it off, that needs vEnergy. I mean, there is going to be a need there, and the more people we bring in on that side, the more vEnergy that is going to be demanded from our validators. So something to keep in mind there.
I would say let the white paper speak for itself in that regard when we release that.
The technical white paper that is 90 something pages.
It's a beast, and it's meant to be. But I think once that's out there, we can really not only have more detailed conversations about vEnergy and the revolutionary aspect of that, but I think people will be really excited about, this is a community that will be advantageous as it grows, and as revenue grows, there's a synergy to grow there.
Yeah, there's so much stuff, guys, that we're working on that Chad, he likes to come in on those Fridays and drop all those bombs. Like today is not even over yet. So
I usually get a couple ideas every Saturday morning that I write down and attend to on Monday. So
yes, Friday is not over. So I'm just saying there's lots of stuff we're working on that you just might not be aware of yet. That all needs be energy. So last question. Will our Vitreus the business customers on the corporate side, will we have support to assist them?
Yes, we would approach that similarly to how we've done every partnership. I'm going back to what Jos said. We want to be focused on what we're good at. There's wonderful partners out there that offer support solutions. TD SYNNEX, our global logistics partner, as an example, has the ability to take on support. So we will absolutely be designing that. I would imagine that's going to be given to somebody who does that for a living, as opposed to us trying to build something out. You don't want us spending 4 months trying to build out a support organization when we can just give our criteria to a company and have them do it for us, so we can continue to innovate with the many ideas that we have going on, as Jaron said.
It's like y'all just don't even know. Hey, I can't even tell you how many times Chad will text me something and I literally just end up being like, "You're joking. Like there's no way this is real." So
Brett and I are starting to have secret meetings to keep up with all of it. So
hey, I get
all
it.
by myself.
Okay, I think we are done with questions. Let me double check one more time. Having more.
Sorry, my light died.
Oh, good point from Joel. Having more vNodes is a form of security. Good point. All right, so we are out of questions. So if you guys want to go around the horn and do your last thoughts, and then I will wrap us up.
Go ahead, Drew.
I think we are paving the way for the future for everybody. And what we're doing is going to be looked back on as this is how it was supposed to be done, and everyone's going to learn from us. I think what we're doing here is exciting. You guys are stupid early, and you don't even understand what's happening. I'm so excited. I mean,
that's why Drew doesn't have hair.
I pulled it out from the excitement and the stress. This was a choice I made myself. Okay. But I'm super excited to be a part of this team, to experience this journey with you guys. And I know that sounds cliche, but this smile on my face won't go away. I can't help it. My jaw hurts. I'm just so happy to be here. And I cannot wait to just do the next thing. There's so much I want to say. I can't say it because I'm not allowed to, but there's stuff coming down the pipe that's going to make you realize I made a good decision by being a part of this community in this company. So I'm just happy to be here.
I'm like, pinch me. There's no way. There's how did I end up here? Pinch me.
Yeah.
I just don't get it.
Go ahead, Jaron. You're off. Go for it.
No, I'm going last. We're gonna we'll let Jos go.
Jos, go ahead, buddy.
Well, I'm very excited as well, and I've seen so many organizations in my career so far, and I've never been part of an organization that is kind of moving at such a high pace and with such great momentum, and also with such talented people. We each are very good in kind of our domains, and this is very, I would say, inspiring, and I'm very much looking forward to what's coming over the next period.
Well said.
All right, Tim.
So,
sorry.
Buy a vNode. You won't regret it. There's nothing else like it. I hope we did justice to explaining, why we're excited about it and really focusing and helping you get a little more intimate with it. Still a little bit of Ms. Jaron's thunder. You have an opportunity to pre-order one next week, and we will continue to innovate and build. And I think next week or next Tech Talk, we'll really focus on some of the security and networking aspects. But thank you for having me today. Pleasure as always. And Ms. Jaron, lead us up.
All right. Well, I'm still praying for a purple vNode. Anyways. So on that note, yes, like he said, we will have pre-orders soon. Tomorrow, Saturday, 10 a.m. Eastern, is the end of stage 6 in the beginning of stage 7. So stage 6 is a 30% discount from our launch price, and stage 7 is a 25% discount. So if you want to get in now. Saturday, tomorrow morning, it goes up to stage 7. So keep an eye on Discord. If you are not in our Discord, please come join our Discord.
Definitely join Discord. I agree with that.
That is where the team hangs out. Chad's always leaving breadcrumbs, or as we say, he spills the beans. I clean the floor, he spills the beans again. So coming out with us in Discord, follow us on Twitter, or X as it is now. And we hope to see you guys soon. Oh, and last point, we are doing an after party in Discord. So we're just going to kind of hang out for a few minutes and just, go over what we talked about here. And so we'd love for you to come join us. Y'all have a wonderful day. We hope you enjoy your weekend. Bye, guys.
Bye.